Are you full of blind hatred that you're allergic to facts now? Here's what happened. We had another debate with the pickleball group last night about how cowardly Trump was for abandoning Air Force One and leaving his people and the reporters, the cockroaches, on the plane and getting onto a second Air Force One and leaving the scene. And of course, all the comments were he's a coward, Mr. Orange, and he's just corrupt, and all the comments basically saying, all the blind comments basically saying he's a coward. That was the bottom line. He's a coward. Then I asked the question, what would you have done in that situation? Well, one comment, reasonable comment, was that I would have waited until it was safe and clear to exit. When is it ever safe for the president of U.S. to, in a foreign country or even within U.S., that he's safe? When? Does he have, Secret Service and that entourage, 50-car entourage for his safety for ego purposes, or is that for security reasons? So when is it ever safe, right? Then I reminded everyone of, on World War II, the Allies had the code breaker. They got a code breaker, right? Here's the turning point of the war. Now we can stop every attack, every invasion, every critical battle. We can stop it. We no longer have to lose thousands of lives, right? Is that a good thing to do? Because when you tell the Nazis that you have the code breaker, doesn't that make the code breaker irrelevant? Because now they just develop a new code. So they had to allow 50, 100,000 people to die at a time so they can save millions of people throughout the war, right? So I reminded them of that fact. Of course, everybody was silent. Nobody responded to that. And again, I asked, what would you have done if you were in President Trump's shoes? And by the way, every president, since the Kennedys, have been facing that type of threat on a daily basis. And what have they done? Again, silence. There is only one clear voice. Chrissy, I give Chrissy a lot of credit, not a real name, a nickname. I give him a lot of credit, and he starts off by saying, I hate Trump. I hate to be in a position to defend Trump. But what would happen if he did get off the plane and he didn't get onto a food truck or food car or whatever it was, and he started, getting his people and people off the plane, what would happen, right? Now everybody knows that he's really on Air Force Two, and that's the new target. So what have you accomplished by doing that? Zero, right? So by doing that, aren't you defeating your own self? You're defeating your own plans. You're giving your plans away. And it's stupid to even attempt to do that, right? And why would you tell the Nazis that you have the code breaker? So when I asked the question a third time, what would you have done? And what are the repercussions of your decisions? Because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And again, silence, right? So if you are so blinded by hate that you cannot see facts anymore, or you're allergic to the truth, and one comment was, here's a quote from the New York Times. And I said, well, who owns the New York Times, right? And we no longer have news, we have opinions influenced by certain groups. And if we have such blind hatred, they are winning. You are a controlled, trained SEAL. And they are winning. The goal is to have us fighting between ourselves to talk about Trump, to talk about anything except what's really important in the world. What's important in the world? Canada's going to shit. We have corruption at the highest level. And for example, we are the richest country on the planet. When you look at the third largest oil reserves, forestry, rare earth minerals, fresh water, right? Why aren't we controlling the fresh water that we have? And that fresh water, we create electricity, and we feed, or we house, or we electrify half the U.S. with our clean water. And yet we have a prime minister that doesn't know how to negotiate, doesn't understand the power that he has, and the minerals and the wealth, the sheer wealth under our feet that we refuse to dig up. And yet we have the forestry to eliminate enough CO2 for half the planet. And yet we pay people to burn forests so we don't have to, free Canadians? Because a wealthy Canadian, and it's easy for me to say all this. What would I do as prime minister? What would I do? I would fire half of the government staff, half gone, right? Of course, they would have 3 months notice before I get into power, but everybody knows what I'm about to do. When I'm about to do something, you know it, so you can take action. If you are ethical in the Canadian government and you have value to bring to the Canadian government, then you are safe. You are not going to be fired. You're not going to be one of the 50 people who have who are going to be fired. So, and why aren't we using artificial intelligence? We are building all these data centers, and yet we have human people working in the government instead of artificial intelligence. Half the jobs can be done by artificial intelligence in Canada. Half the jobs. So why are we, again, if I was prime minister, I would fire half the people, and with the wealth and the dividends coming in from that wealth, every Canadian will receive about $1,500 per month instead of paying taxes. We pay the highest taxes in the G7. We are in a recession, and we are the richest country in the world. Like, how the fuck does that make sense? Truly, how the fuck does that make sense? We have the wealth of the world under our feet, and we pay the highest taxes in the world, certainly in the G7, and we are in the recession. Tell me that we have great leadership. Please convince me of that. Can we truly afford another 10 years of this type of leadership? And why aren't we using the resources for negotiations and getting around these tariffs? We need a true leader in Canada. And by focusing on what Trump or the orange man is doing, aren't we missing the point, right? Can you argue both sides of any issue? Because if you can't argue both sides of any issue, if you are not practicing with your buddies and say, okay, now switch sides. Now you take Trump's side, I take the other side. If you're not doing that, are you truly educated? Are you truly looking at both sides of the issue, and can you argue both sides of any issue? Would love to hear your comments below. Follow for more. Would love to hear your comments.